Oh, I'm really glad that you've joined us, Christina. It certainly takes the pressure off me a little. So the idea of this hour is to give you a sense of, first of all, I guess a high-level overview of the course that we're offering, and I guess a little bit about the approach to facilitation and where and how we imagine these skills might be applied and integrated into different industries, different roles, and opportunities for you as freelancers or within your workplaces, whatever they may be. And I'm aware that a large majority of you, I think, have already completed or are completing the Metavision psychotherapy training, but perhaps not all of you. There might be some
No, I can see names that I don't recognize here
who haven't done Metavision
yes.
training. Yeah. So we will endeavour to make sure that the terms we're using are accessible, and if there's anything that we're talking about that doesn't make a lot of sense to you, then please say, what does that mean? That would be great to hear as well. So some of you will know me, and many of you will know Christina, but it might be good, Christina, for us to just introduce ourselves briefly. My name is Sarah, and I am actually a graduate of Metavision and have been on the faculty of the Metavision Institute in various forms for a number of years. As a facilitator, I think facilitation was something I fell into quite early on in my career because I have a background in performing arts, and I was doing a lot of teaching, and so I think I got a lot of basic skills of facilitation through teaching drama early on. But more recently, I use facilitation skills in quite a broad range of environments. So I work a lot as a consultant and a trainer. So I work within organizations, facilitating conflict, facilitating teams, team coaching, and various other things that come under organizational development and conflict facilitation umbrellas. And then, of course, I also work as a psychotherapist. So there's a degree of facilitation I've done throughout my career of within psychotherapy in lots of different contexts. I think for me, what really excites me about facilitation and what I was really keen about in creating this course was the role of facilitation is sort of stepping forward as a fairly new field to be recognized independently. And I think for myself, I'm very conscious of what's happening in the world at the moment and the particular time that we're living in. And the challenges that we are being faced with as a species, and within our communities and our politics and all of these different areas. And I think I see so much divisive language being used, and then I sort of see that rippling down in the different places that I work, in the communities that I'm involved in. And I think facilitation is such a vital skill at this particular point in time, because being able to bring differing views together without it sort of turning into warfare, really, it feels like a really essential opportunity to be picked up at this moment. So it's interesting to me that facilitation is being much more recognized by organizations and in organizational development work, but also I think in the sort of broader world channel, I guess I see such a need for it, and so I get really excited about the idea of working with a group of people who are learning these new skills and going out into the world, and hopefully creating some really interesting dialogue. Christina, would you like to talk a little bit about you and your excitement about facilitation and your work?
Well, yes. I'm just thinking, I'm just gathering my thoughts. What happened for me many years ago was that I was asked to facilitate a group of junior doctors rotating through the palliative care unit at St. Vincent's Hospital, I was supposed to be giving them supervision. And I thought, group supervision, that's interesting. How do I do this? And I realized it's a group. It's a group of people with a particular area, a particular interest, who are also working together as a team. How do I work with it? And what I did was just simply draw on my process work skills that I'd developed and realized that wherever you are with a group, there's a process that's wanting to happen. And if you can tap into that and unfold it and help it to manifest, to look at the edges, to bring them out, to ground it, just the same principles that we've used in a process work training, it can be applied to groups and to facilitation processes. And then, of course, that was before I began Metavision. And then beginning Metavision, and in fact, it's where the term came from, Metavision, because I felt I wasn't doing supervision, I was doing Metavision. It was a bigger overview process. Then beginning Metavision, of course, I was facilitating classes all the time and staff. And again, the process work skills were hugely relevant, but to see it as a skill set that's not, that is very similar to what we learn in the counselling and psychotherapy training, but actually can be applied much more broadly, was very exciting to me. And I used to say a very long time ago that when I began the counselling and psychotherapy, I didn't want to get stuck in counselling and psychotherapy only, because I think the world is also broader. It's both. And so to open up to a facilitation training and then to build on the skills that we have developed in the training that we do at Metavision and take it further and apply it to groups. But then, you know, there's such a range of groups. There's teams, and there's therapeutic groups, there's supervision groups, there's then there's boards, and there's, because I'm also working on boards at Metavision, and then there's also taking it further again in this time, as you said, Sarah, the need for so much more collaborative action and to facilitate major divides is needed. And so I became very excited about the idea of a facilitation training that parallels and grows out of the counselling and psychotherapy is really wonderful. And to be doing it, and to be having you and Elsa, the vanishing Elsa at the moment. I mean, she's not vanished, of course. She's having a well-deserved rest, I suspect, and will be horrified when she finds she's missed the time. It's really a very exciting thing, because I think Elsa brings a particular quality and a particular lens through which she looks through her work in the States and working with collaborative groups. And what you bring, Sarah, in your work in Melbourne and with all the sorts of groups you're working with and facilitating, and then with the background of Metavision, I think we make an awesome team, quite honestly. And now, as a facilitator, I've got a dog at the door. I'm going to let him in.
Thank you, Christina. And certainly I know this idea is something that Christina and I have spoken about for years, and I know, you know, it's been floating around in various conversations with various people for a long time. And the idea, I guess, took a few different forms until it became really clear that facilitation was sort of the natural way to bring this work forward. So there's definitely a lot of excitement from us around beginning and taking this journey with the group that joins us next year. Mm-hmm. just to acknowledge, I guess, that for some of you I mean, I imagine most of you are coming with various different backgrounds and training, and that many of you might have questions around, well, what makes this particular course different to say, and this is for those of you that are familiar with, I guess, some of Metavision's other courses, so the Metavision Psychotherapy and Counselling course, or perhaps a qualification in process work, which is one of the foundational skill sets and theories that Metavision works with. Christina, would you like to talk a bit about that? What makes this course different to, say, doing the psychotherapy training, or say a pure process work training?
Yes, I think what I've discovered at Metavision is to have a holistic lens brings another dynamic, and with a holistic lens here on facilitation, we're using the incredibly rich skills from process work, but not only. We can draw on other sources. And also in the class, people come with a lot of skills already. And so it becomes a collaborative learning lab while we're bringing a skill set and an agenda, of course, and a process that we go through. Everybody's got a lot to contribute. And so what arises is something new and unique that is really fitting for the times, I think. And we can't know exactly, but I see that in the counselling and psychotherapy training. When we bring people together, we go through a process, but it's each year it's different because of the people involved. And if you're bringing experiences in facilitation with music, as Simon might be doing, or in all sorts of other areas that you're working with, it creates a fabric that isn't fixed. It's developing, it's moving, it's growing, and it's holistic. And I find that very, very exciting. And I think that's what we need in these times. We need input from different sources, and not to hold fast to one, and then to develop the unique style as a facilitator and for the environment that you're coming into, that is flexible enough to meet the needs of the people you're with. That's what really excites me.
Thanks, Christina. Yeah, and I think as we've been talking about and developing this work, I think one of the things we're really keen to bring is the opportunity to explore facilitation in different contexts, and the focus on skill building and the different facets of facilitation. So as I imagine you would expect, there will be a theoretical component, but facilitation is a very dynamic skill, and really practice is going to be a key feature within the course. So we'll be drawing on, just to give you a very brief list, and I realize some of these terms might be familiar and some might be totally foreign, but to give you a brief list, some of the theories that and practices that we will be working with will include so process-oriented psychology or process work, network facilitation, ecology, systems theory, coaching approaches, eco-psychology, and eco-psych is that sort of larger context that we were talking about earlier, the sort of world environment, and it really feeds into systems theory thinking as well. So it will be we're wanting to put forward, I guess, very complementary and diverse theories and opportunities for developing skill sets. I'm going to jump ahead a little. I was probably going to mention this later, but I think it's worth mentioning now. I think one of the other things is very practical tools. So the idea of a facilitation toolkit, where some of those things that I guess as a facilitator you might learn over time, of like, how do you create an icebreaker when you get a group together, and how do you perhaps what exercise or activity might you do for some team building, or what if discussion is really or there's a full day of discussion, or you want to move away from purely verbal ways of working, what are some other elements you can bring in? So some very, very practical tools that will build up over the course, so that as you leave, you've got you've got a little toolkit that you can go out with, and it really helps, I think, in creating your facilitation plans and moving into applying the work in the real world.
Which would include, I presume, Sarah, being able to set up a contract with somebody who might want you as a facilitator, and then how you might report back and deal with the person that's engaged you, that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's one of the other things that we've noticed each as individuals in our work, is that facilitation, sometimes, you get a call of, can you come and facilitate this group? But often it sits within other contexts. And I'm sure for many of you, you're imagining where these skills might be applicable within your own workplaces and contexts that you're already in. And so really you'll be looking at a bit about, what does facilitation look like and where can it sit? So what am I really going to be able to do with this at the end? And I think we'll draw a bit from the experience of the group, of course, but we have ideas already and experience in knowing that facilitation skills really can fit within coordination roles, within leadership roles, HR, consulting, group therapy work and psychotherapeutic work, and teaching and training. There's many other places where it can fit, but I think in acknowledging that there's the skill of the on the ground, how do I work with a group, and then there's what Christina was mentioning, which is sort of all the other work around it, which is the engagement phase with clients, the contracting, facilitation plans, and then what happens next. So you might work with a group, and then what are the recommendations, or where might you go from there? So that will be part of what we'll look at towards the end of the course as well. So just to give you an overview, I think we're sort of giving you a little insight into the content, but I'll give you a clearer sort of overview of the progression and the arc of learning that we've got planned for this particular course. So as many of you will know, if you've looked at the information that was on Metavision website and it's gone out, there'll be 3 intensives. The first is 4 days, the second is 5 days, and the third is 4 days. And the dates are available on the website. So there's one in Feb, one in June, and one in October. There will be an online learning component. So what that will, so in between the intensives, there'll be connection points through those months in between. Those connection points will take various forms. So there'll be peer learning groups once a month where you'll get together with your fellow learners. There'll be mentor coaching and supervision, which will be provided by Christina, Elsa, and myself. And there'll be 3 sessions per participant. So that you can use in various ways. It'll be about sort of supporting your individual development, the questions you're bringing, where you're challenged, and there will also be a project that you'll be creating that will give you a chance for real world practice outside of the course. And so the supervision and the mental coaching sessions are a chance potentially to check in and work on aspects that might be coming up within that project. And then there'll also be online group classes or learning labs. So there'll be 6 throughout the course, which will fit in between those intensives. And there'll be an opportunity to check in and debrief around some of the learning and challenges from your own facilitation experience that you're getting, and also to dive a bit deeper into certain topics. So I guess there's a huge amount of content that we could include in the intensives, but we want to make sure that we're also including plenty of time for practice. So the learning labs actually give us a chance to introduce potentially some new topics and reading and various other skills and ideas that you'll have an opportunity to discuss and then put into practice before you come back to the next learning lab or to your peer group. So each of those things will feed into each other in terms of the flow of learning.
And there'll be some resources available on the e-learning platform.
Exactly, yeah. And there'll be a home study program which will include some reading, some writing, journaling, reflective learning, and a set number of practice hours, which really, it's the more you can get out and practice these skills as you're learning, I think the better you'll be able to ground and integrate the learning in the long run. And that's the idea really with having a project that you're working on. So it's a opportunity to have lived experience along the way, and it will hopefully also feed into those practice hours. So you come out with a certain number of hours of experience.
Great.
Christina,
maybe we should just pause for a moment, Elsa. Sarah.
She's here in spirit.
About Elsa. I'm just wondering if it's just a moment to see if after that was a lot of information.
It was.
And I'm wondering if there are any questions. Have any come up? Has anybody got any questions, and have you put it up on the chat room or?
I haven't seen anything in the chat, so you're welcome to type something if you've got it, or if you'd like to unmute yourself, you could potentially throw a question out that you might have.
Hey, I've got one.
Good.
Hello everyone, Sarah.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, Anne.
Hey, I'm actually driving a car, but I can hear you both, hear it all very well. One question, I guess, not about the content as much. Just wondering, what's the qualification and is it accredited?
That's great. Great question. The qualification is a certificate in facilitation, and it's accredited with Medivision. It's not accredited further than that at the moment, although we'll be looking into things. Sarah, would you like to say something more about the directions we might be going with that?
Sure. So there's because facilitation is an emerging field, there's not a peak body for facilitation specifically. There are absolutely communities of facilitators and conferences and various other things that to be involved in. But in terms of a specific accreditation for facilitation by a peak body, there's not one in existence. But certainly our thinking is that we structure this course to be in the to really be cultivating best practice. Christina, am I right in thinking that if you are a psychotherapist, potentially you can count this training as professional development hours with PACFA?
Absolutely. So yes, absolutely.
And that may be,
because Medivision is offering it. Medivision's well regarded in PACFA, I might say.
Yeah.
And the other thing about it, I mean, we're moving. This is the first time we're offering this, which is
exciting.
It's really exciting, and it's new, and it's developing, and we're paralleling this course in structure and the requirements with the program that we've been developing that is for a graduate diploma. Maybe one day we can then, and maybe not too far in the distance, but we can't promise anything. But that's the level that is being really structured at as a graduate diploma in facilitation. However, we can't call it that yet.
Okay.
It's being paralleled with the Medivision training.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess on the certificate, it could mention, or will it mention how many hours of training?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, so that answers that question. Thank you both for that.
Pleasure. You're welcome, Anne.
Are there some other questions that you're sitting with? Feel free to unmute your mic and
speak up.
Speak up, yeah.
How well would the course fit in with the second year of counselling and psychotherapy?
I think it would fit very well. I think it depends, of course, what else you've got in your life. You know, I mean, if you've got a full-time job and a couple of small children, then it's full on. But, and who knows, people are so different. In my experience, watching people go through these trainings, everybody does things very differently. But of course, the work in the second year is taking the counselling and psychotherapy deeper. So you're working with trauma, you're working with issues around abuse, addictions, etc. You're working with deepening your ability to work with people, and you also do a research project. All of those things are very applicable in this field as well. So it only enhances it. Some of the things around rank and power you may be familiar with from your first year, but you can never learn it too much. I've been to many, many seminars where we're dealing with that, and I always learn something new. So I think that they actually go well hand in hand.
Are there set assignments, or is it more the practice? What's the layout of?
There won't be set assignments as such, but there will be, so the online component, the online learning will have a rhythm to it where there'll be commitments that will come up. I'm just trying to get my head around. So there's 6 learning labs, and then there's once a month peer groups. You're sort of looking at sort of once or twice a month to actually be online connecting with others around this. And I think the learning labs will be about an hour and a half, and I imagine peer groups you'd want an hour to an hour and a half. So there'll be reading and there'll be thinking and discussion that will, I guess, feed into those online connection points and also continue on after. So there's not necessarily going to be assignments as much as there will be, I guess, taking on learning as you go through the year.
And the application of that to your practice.
Yeah.
Facilitating a group or working with a group or doing something. It's much more that than writing assignments the way we have to do it for the counselling and psychotherapy.
Yep. Sounds very interactive and fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's interesting you use the word fun, because the last conversation that Elsa and I had, and Christina was there for part of it as well, was about actually bringing in as many fun elements as possible. So you know, things like improvisation and playback theatre and movement and all of those sorts of tools, I think, and even, you know, music or sound, creating atmosphere, and being able to bring humor into a group. You know, I think they're all really valuable tools, and I think Elsa and I were laughing about how earnest we can get sometimes, you know, when we're working with a group, you know, and to be able to bring in some of that lightness and that fun, I think is, it can be really, really wonderful. And in particular, in navigating some of the more, you know, some of the tricky spots with people and groups at times, you know, be able to bring some lightness and play into it in a way that's welcomed, can be a lovely way to work. So that's certainly something that we're bringing into this course. And I think it might be helpful just to bring your question a little broader, just around, you know, how does this course fit with life and other commitments? And I think we've really thought a lot about that, and I think we each have experience in delivering trainings, and this is part of the idea with the blended learning, to have intensives and then to have connection points where you continue the learning. You're having practice out in the world that might be within your workplace. It might not even be extra necessarily, you know, and to be able to have a, you know, have that learning support and peer groups and connection points along the way, so that it can fit around, you know, people's work hours, their family commitments as much as possible. You know, live busy lives, and it's a big commitment to take on a course like this. So it's certainly part of our thinking about how can we make it accessible for people in terms of a time commitment, and also deliver something that is going to give you really, really good tools and skills and practice in taking it out into your lives and workplaces.
Sarah, there's a question here from Paul Mitchell. Will we open up certain workshops and online webinars as a standalone short course? Did you discuss that with Elsa?
You have not discussed that, no.
We've thought of it more as a course that you're going through. One of the things that I found, Paul, in running the counselling and psychotherapy, is that the cohort is very important. It may be that a certain webinar, a certain intensive and follow-up after that could be open on its own, particularly the first one. But we haven't actually thought about that in great detail. So if that's something you're interested in, send us an email about it.
I think it would be a possibility. I think our planning for next year is really around the whole course, and working with a cohort throughout. And as that develops, I think it might become clearer to us as well, specifically what we could pull out as a standalone short course. There's certainly plenty within it that I think we could. But as a first time of running next year, it makes sense in my mind to run the whole course, and then potentially think about some short offerings or workshops, online or in person. I was just wondering whether to say a bit more about the learning arc, or perhaps we go to another.
Well, there's another question that might be relevant right now. Can you tell me a bit more about the project? Do we need to get our practice hours with an organisation or existing group, or can we create our own?
The idea of the project is to have an experience of facilitating. So you don't necessarily have to go out and get a facilitation contract. It might be something you can apply within your workplace, perhaps a project you're already working on that you can sort of shape in a way where you're getting these facilitation skills. In terms of creating your own, absolutely. If you want to create a particular a project with a particular focus, I think that's really the idea, about getting some practice in how you would like to apply this. So when you say, can we create an existing group or create our own, I think potentially you could create your own. It would depend on, I guess, the focus of your project around what you were hoping to gain through the practice, and what learning you felt was valuable for you. But there's no hard and fast rules about a project must look like one particular thing. So that would be something that we would talk a bit about in the first intensive, and support you to shape what your project might be, and sort of know what your steps are after you leave the intensive in setting that up.
There is another question here. You mentioned systems theory and a few other facilitation types. Could you explain a bit more about the different modules, types of facilitation methods offered? Does that come under the learning arc, Sarah, or what do you think?
Possibly, and I wonder whether there's two questions there. So maybe if I talk about the learning arc a little bit, then and Christina as well, you might like to say a bit about that. Then we can see if we've answered your question. I wonder if there's also a question there about what do some of those terms mean. I'll start with the learning arc and let's see where we get to. So we've really thought about the journey through the program in terms of sort of where to begin and building your skills. So we're going to look at first orientating you as a facilitator. So looking at you in the role and the skills that come with that, which include the external facilitation skills and the internal facilitation skills, or kind of inner practices that we need to develop in order to be able to be effective and aware within that role. Then we're going to, through the second intensive, we're going to start to look more at how we're actually going to apply those approaches and skills to the group. So weaving your skills and your practice within groups. So we look much more then at things like systems theory and group dynamics, including power and rank, and what that means as a lived live experience with a group.
And field theory and the roles, etc. Exactly.
Yeah, field theory, roles. So deepening, I think, some of the learning that some of you might have had in the Metavision psychotherapy training around the process work, group facilitation theories and skills. And then over the course of the time, there'll be feedback as you go from facilitators and from your peers around you as a facilitator, your practice, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities to practice in a learning
and developing
in a learning context. And thanks, Simon. You just said what is field theory and roles and systems theory. Christina, did you want to say a little bit about that?
Field theory, okay, yeah, sure, great, good. It's a great question. You know, we're talking about systems. Systems theory it has been developed, when was that? In the 80s, 90s, where it was seen that the system has its own coherence and influence, and I feel that what process work has done is take that even further, using the notion of field theory, which comes from quantum physics. And so it's seeing that there's a subtle organizing field that organizes a group, that and various roles then can become identified within that system and that field, and that the field is influenced on many levels, such as subtly by the presence of a ghost figure, for example, a figure that's not present but whose influence is being felt. Like, let me just think.
Like Elsa.
I'm sorry, Elsa. Yes, thanks. Yeah, she's absent. So she's a ghost role. She's present and she's very much part of this, but she's not here in person. That's right. Lovely. Yeah, great.
So I think the system, as Christina was saying, I think that systems theory is about the interconnectedness of everything. And so when you're working with an individual or a group, you're sort of looking at that context and that how that system is moving and changing around and within those relationships. And being able to notice that as you facilitate is a really valuable thing, because you start to see some of the broader patterns that are playing out, and where, you know, people might be drawn into certain cycles of things, and that kind of thing.
And how in a system or a field that you can bring a sort of conflict down to a relationship that's then worked with individually and specifically, but then that also has an influence in the field and goes out from there, out as broadly as it can be received, and it makes a change, it makes a difference. One of the places that there's been research and examples done on that is in the world work from process work, where Arnold Mindell, for example, went into a place like Los Angeles when there was the riots, race riots, and there was a lot going on, and they worked with the polarized positions and really worked with it on an individual level. And there was at the same time a reduction in the intensity of the conflict in the overall field. It's a fascinating thing to witness and to be part of. And the work that Arnold Mindell, going around the world in all these conflict places, has been quite influential, but also it's fed into the development of the theory that he uses.
Thanks, Christina.
Okay.
Are there other questions that you're sitting with as a group or as individuals? We've thrown a lot of information at you.
How long is the book list?
How long is the book list?
How long is the book list?
I actually don't know. I don't know yet, Anne.
It'll probably grow as we go through the year.
Still got a hangover from the Metavision training.
Yeah.
You might already have some of the books.
Okay, yep.
Like The Leader is a Martial Artist and what's the other one?
Sitting in the Fire.
Sitting in the Fire.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, Anne, again, I think with the book list, you know, there'll be, to be honest, I don't know that we've talked about it in great detail, but my thought with it is about, again, thinking about what's really manageable with people's lives, and in terms of your learning, you know, like what you can actually digest and start to put into practice. So I think there will be, you know, there will be some reading, obviously, and it will take the form of books, but also, say, articles that we might be able to perhaps have one or two articles on a particular topic that you'd get at a certain point, and then you might meet with your, you know, the online learning lab a week or two later, and have discussion around that. So there will be reading, but I think some of it's going to be integrated in, hopefully in a really accessible way that gives you a chance to take in some of it and then learn through discussion and learn through practice as well. And then I'm sure there will be a myriad of other books that you can dive into if you'd like to. But I think we're certainly not aiming to weigh down your bookshelves too much.
No, and it's not like the Metavision course where it's accredited with an outside body and you've got to sort of do all sorts of things to get you to this level.
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly a skills building training in terms of facilitation, but it's also around your own learning and finding and stretching and using a group to give you feedback and reflect on yourself and develop your own inner work as well, and develop your capacity and confidence to step out into the world as a facilitator. It's great.
Yeah, so it's quite practical and less theoretical.
Yes. And you have theory to support your practice, but yes.
Sure. But it sounds like, you know, what you're both describing is a lot of, it's very interactive and quite practical. A lot of doing, a lot of practice. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? If there are things that that pop up, you know, between now and whenever,
when we start,
where, Christina, do you know where?
Send. Well, do you want to receive emails, Sarah?
I thought, and this is where we're missing Elsa, this is why we're both looking a little blank. So last time Elsa and I spoke, Elsa was going to talk to Dee about setting something up on the Metavision website.
I think it's a good idea.
And so what we'll do, so I'm not sure if that is set up yet or not.
It's
so,
not set up yet, but it can be quite easily. We can set that up. So questions can come into that. We should have a place on the website in relation to this. We'll have to talk to Sam, our IT person, and also then to have it come into the Metavision, so we'd need to know what email address. I mean, even a question at admin at Metavision at the moment would do until we get further with that. And then we can send it from the office out to you and to Elsa and to me, possibly.
Yeah. And what we'll try and do, as much as, you know, if there's sort of general questions that other people might benefit from seeing and seeing the answer to, we're hoping to have a space where we can put it, you know, so that you can all view it. If there's other things that are popping up that might be helpful.
Yeah, so I think we need a few practical points too around, it starts in February.
Yes.
The first one's going to be held actually in the Southern Highlands after all. We were trying to find somewhere in Sydney, but we haven't managed just yet. We'll try and have perhaps the second one. We'll see how people fare and feel. We can move it. But for this first time that we're running this through, we've decided to hold it in the Southern Highlands. It's a very nice area. It works very well for the counselling and psychotherapy course. It creates a very good cohort and community feeling. And we need to start getting enrolments and to be sending that into admin at metavision.com.au. And we'll get the practical sides of that going.
Thanks, Christina. Yeah, so if you'd like to join us, please do make contact with admin at metavision.com.au. The first intensive, the date is the 20th of February to the 24th. Those dates are on the website if you need to have a look at them for the 3 intensives throughout the year. We'd be very thrilled to, someone said, what's the cutoff for enrolment?
What was our starting date?
20th of February.
Well, I'd say the cutoff is usually, it's about the beginning of February. Beginning of February. We need to know the numbers.
Yeah.
And to get the, begin setting up our, how we receive you.
So beginning of February, we'll put the date up on the website then as well.
Yeah, maybe the 6th of February, something like that.
Yeah, great. We'd be absolutely thrilled if you decide to join us next year. It would be lovely to meet the ones of you that I haven't met and re-meet the ones of you that I have, and in person is always lovely too. You're just a lot of boxes on a screen right now, but I really appreciate that each of you have taken the time out of your day and your evenings to come along. I know how hard that can be at times, so I'm really thrilled that so many of you managed to join us, and look forward to seeing some of you in February.
Yes. There was something else I was going to say. Now it's gone out of my head. Wait a minute. Actually, I know what I was going to say. As I've been together with Sarah and Elsa developing this, it's very exciting. There's a wonderful frisson or something that happens around it. I think it's going to be, and it is the first time we're offering it. It is a real sort of, it's a pioneer project, but I think there's a lot of depth also behind us, each one of us, that we're bringing. And I really think it's really quite an exciting project to be involved with. Yeah, I want to say that.
Can I just say something there, a quick question?
Yes.
Before we leave. So I feel excited about it. I'm just wondering if you've considered what's your minimum to run it.
Yes. Probably, what do you reckon, Sarah? 15?
We haven't, I don't think we've sat on a firm number, but yes, we were thinking around 15 as a minimum.
Yeah, okay.